Hi, this is Patricia McLinn, your host for Authors Love Readers podcast. As you know, as we've told you many times, we record a lot more content than can ever make it into the usual episode. Oddly, I ask more questions than the guests can answer in a compact time frame. So our editors save these extra conversations that don't fit into the regular show. And there are some delightful elements to these. So I hope you enjoy it. In this episode, we'll be diving deeper into our conversation with Brenda Hiatt. She is a best-selling author of nearly 25 novels and quite a diversity, so that includes sweet and spicy historical romance, time travel romance, and a young adult science fiction Starstruck series. Okay, Brenda, a lot of us writers, I actually hope, deep in my heart, it's all of us, have bad habit words that show up in our manuscripts and that we have to deal with after. Just and really are among mine. Do you have bad habit words or phrases or constructions?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Share, bare your soul.
Well, it's not always the same for every book, I've found. Some books I have pet words and phrases that I just way overuse and have to do a search and destroy for. The ones that I tend to do in almost every book are words that we probably all overdo, things like just and suddenly. I love the word suddenly. And
that's a new one. That's a new one. I don't think anybody else has said.
I think that's just my pet way to make something seem a little more exciting as I'm writing, and then I have to go back later and find a different way to say that. Let's see. Actually is one I overuse, and basically in my YAs, not so much in my Regencies. I don't use basically so much, but actually I use a lot in both. It's mostly those modifier words like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I overuse those so much in my first drafts, and then I have to go back and delete a lot of them when I go back. I tend to overwrite my first drafts and then have to go back and tighten a lot.
I find I write strangely, so I'm doing multiple passes, and I find that I then end up putting a few back in because of rhythm or whatever. But initially I take so many out. So, what's your favorite part of the writing process? The beginning?
Oh, having written.
Looking back, do you like editing?
Actually, I do. I find I enjoy the editing process. I know a lot of authors hate that part and wish they could just write first drafts. And I find first drafts far and away the hardest. Because I cannot turn off that internal editor when I'm writing as much as I try. And I've tried every trick in the book. I've tried with my monitor turned all the way down so I can't see what I'm typing. I sometimes will use an Alpha Smart, and that works some because I can only see 3 or 4 lines of text at a time. But I just have a very hard time moving forward if I know something needs to be fixed. And as a result, I'm a pretty slow writer, much slower writer than I wish I were. I have gone to so many workshops and read so many books and blogs and stuff on how to write faster. I mean, constantly I'm reading and studying how do I write faster, and none of it seems to take. I'm kind of resigned to this point that my process is not, but I would love to be able to just fling a first draft onto the page so that then I can settle into the good part, the editing and turning it into something readable. That's the part I really do enjoy most is taking that raw draft and turning it into a real book.
But I think that process of getting the first draft down is giving you tools and filling things in from your subconscious that let you then do the editing.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying there aren't a lot of fun parts to writing the first draft. I mean, I love that part where I'm like 3/4 of the way through the book and I suddenly realize why I had that little scene in chapter 2. Because now it all makes sense. You know? And the stuff that my subconscious comes up with, surprises me and thrills me. And I love that. And that happens in the first draft as a rule.
Those are
Every now and then
wonderful.
I get one of those epiphanies while I'm revising, though. But yeah, that's mostly a first draft thing, and I do enjoy that aspect of it. But I always have parts where it's just a slog. It's like, okay, I need to get from point A to point B, and what's the most interesting way to do that? And yeah, and sometimes it goes better than others.
Do you have books that just never totally came together? In other words, do you have some unpublished or half finished books? And do you think, or are other ideas that haven't gelled? And what's your feeling about those? I know somebody who throws them out. I was horrified as a master recycler.
Yeah, I do have books I never sold that I never published. I've got one that was about a TV weather, girl. It was a woman who was a TV weather person, and I did all kinds of research, visited a TV studio and all kinds of stuff. And now everything, of course, would be totally obsolete.
Yeah.
This was 20 years ago. Never did publish that one, and I wrote the whole manuscript, and that never got published. I've got a couple of others that I wrote parts of that never became whole books. Yeah. Some morphed into books that did become whole books.
Well, that's recycling. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I started at least 2 time travels that never happened. I did publish one time travel, but then I started 2 others that I never finished.
So what is your feeling about those, though? Do you think they still have a possibility, or you think they're in the drawer for good?
A couple of them are almost certainly in the drawer for good. I think they just were. Well, but that one contemporary romance that I wrote, I was writing just because I thought it would be easier to sell a contemporary romance, and I wrote the whole book. But I don't read contemporary romance really, and if I had sold it, then I'd have been stuck writing contemporary romances.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
It didn't sell.
Well, and how long both of us have been around the business and heard so many people saying, "Oh, I'm going to write this because it's easier," and you think, "Yeah, it's not easier. You should write it because you like it."
That's why I tell people, when I do writing classes or give writing advice, it's write what you love, write what you enjoy, because life is too short to not.
What do you do if you get stuck when you're writing?
Happens all the time. Taking a walk usually helps. A plotting walk helps. And when I'm down here in Florida, I'll swim laps in the pool and think about the book while I'm doing that. Brainstorming with another writer or with my oldest daughter. She's actually a really good brainstorm buddy. She asks me all the hard questions that I somehow always forget to ask myself when I'm stuck. And she's very good at asking those hard questions and forcing me to think things through. And then I slap my forehead and it's like, oh, well, yeah, duh.
Yeah.
But I needed somebody else to make me answer that question.
Sometimes I find I just need somebody else to tell my problem to. And as I'm verbalizing it, boom, there's the answer.
Yes, that has happened to me often when I'm talking to my daughter. It's even gotten to the point where if she's not available, she lives in Germany, so she's not, and she's a performer, and she's not always available for this when I need this kind of help. So, she may be sound asleep, when I need this help. Yeah. For 6 hours difference in time here. And I've actually a couple times decided, okay, well, I'll just write an email laying this all out, and when she gets the email, she can maybe give me some ideas. And I'm halfway through the email, and it's like, oh, of course.
Yeah, and yet I find that if I just say it out loud to myself, that somehow that doesn't work. I need to be bouncing it off somebody else.
Yeah, I needed to feel like I was telling her. I was explaining it to her before it would click. Yes.
So when you're revising and editing, have you ever taken something out of a book that you mourn, that you still mourn?
Oh, yeah. That's one reason I really like writing in Scrivener now. I've discovered I make a lot of use of it now. And I wrote like 3 or 4 books in Scrivener before I even discovered this feature. It's called Snapshot. And you can snapshot a scene and it just saves it in a little sidebar for you. And then you can wipe it out and start over and you've got the old one sitting there. So I do that now because I will waste so much time trying to salvage already written words when I really just need to start over.
Oh.
I do that all the time, and it slows me down so much because I'm doing gymnastics trying to
Huh.
fit these lovely phrases in. So I do the snapshot. I've got them saved, and then I can start fresh. And it's like, oh, I wrote something like that. I look over there. Oh yeah, I can just lift this little bit and plug it right in here. And it's great.
But the bits are serving the whole rather than trying to
Yes,
make the whole
right.
get all the bits
And I
in.
do have whole scenes that, especially when I'm revising and I'm going through, and it's like, this scene actually doesn't serve any purpose. It's kind of cute, but it doesn't forward the story or the characters or anything. It's just kind of a cute little bit. And the book's too long anyway. This one has to go. I love it, but it has to go. I hate that. I hate doing that, but I have had to do that. Yes.
Oh, but I save those. Don't you save them?
I save them. I do save them. They're outtakes, and I sometimes put them like on. I've got a separate section of my website that's for like the Starstruck books because I've found that those readers. I actually have more historical readers, but my YA readers are more engaged.
Huh.
I'll say.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who are more likely to email me or post on the website or whatever and ask questions and want more of this and this and this. So I've got a section of my website devoted to those books, and I have like snippets and things there just for fun for those readers. And I don't get the impression my historical readers necessarily care as much about that kind of stuff.
They're reading the
They
next
just wanna
book.
read the book. Yeah.
So, what sort of interactions over the years have you had with readers? Do you have any great stories?
Oh, well, I'm sure we all remember those of us who've been in the trenches for this long remember the old bookstore book signing days.
Yes.
That's when you said the bit about, readers that think ideas are the hard part. Yeah. Haven't we all had that guy come up to us at a book signing and say, I've got this great idea. How about I tell it to you, you write it, and we'll split the money.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think you got to get at the end of the line because I already have 740 ideas.
Yeah. I've got more ideas than I'm going to live long enough to write.
Yep.
And nobody can do as much justice to your idea as you can.
True.
So you should write the idea yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always have those. And but now with the advent of email and the online, I'm very much a typically introverted writer. I know writers who are not. You're not really introverted.
Yeah. Well, if you go by spending a lot of time with people making you more tired, then I am an introvert.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a sociable introvert.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I enjoy being with people too in small doses. But but I tend to be a bit of a hermit anyway, and book signings were incredibly draining for me.
Yeah.
Back in the day when we were expected to do them. I mean, 2 hours of being on.
Yeah.
It would take me the rest of the day to recover from one of those. And so I'm really just as happy not to be doing that anymore. I mean, I do the occasional one mostly as a favor to, a bookseller or something, but I really don't seek those out at all anymore. I interact mostly online with my readers now, and I really enjoy getting emails from readers, and I answer every single one, even the ones that maybe I shouldn't. Though I have learned that there are some readers that it's probably best to not. I mostly don't answer right away, especially my teen readers, because I've discovered if I answer too quickly, then they immediately email back and they want to like become my best friend and have an ongoing conversation. And that, yeah. So I often will like wait a day and then answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do answer all the emails I get, unless they're just downright rude. I won't answer if it's just downright rude. But if it seems like a legit reader email, I always answer.
I answer, but it's often late because my inboxes are I have multiple of them, and I'm always so far behind.
Yes.
And when
Yes.
you get on deadline and pushing with a book, and the way I write, I need to just give myself up to the book. So I'm just living in that book, and email doesn't get answered, and all of a sudden I've got, 10 inboxes with 400 emails in each, and it just, oh my.
I should ignore my email more than I do, probably. I tend to read my email over breakfast every morning. So and then I'll just star the urgent stuff that I don't want to actually answer right then, and then later when I have some time, I'll search for the stars. I try to keep things from slipping through the cracks that way, but it doesn't always work. I also love this new feature, fairly new feature that Gmail has put in, where you can mark a message as unread,
Oh,
because those always catch my eye
yeah.
quicker
Yeah.
if it looks like I haven't read it at all. So if it's something I want to make sure I come back to, I just mark it like I haven't opened it at all.
I feel bad because I love to get the emails from the readers, and then because of my own slowness, they're not always, but they're mostly associated with guilt for not answering sooner.
I do sometimes let them pile up too long. I mean, and what's really bad is I don't check my spam folder as often as I should. And I
Oh
always feel
gosh,
bad
I never do
when
that.
some random reader email goes into spam and I don't see it for 2 weeks.
Unless unless it's a somebody telling me you should have received this email, I never check spam. Oh, oh, great, more emails, Brenda. Thanks.
I try to check it every few days now, and 98% of it really is spam. But I've had enough things that weren't. Usually reader emails that sneak in
Oh
there,
gosh.
that I check it a lot more often now than I used to, but I don't check it daily by any
Well,
means.
okay, readers, you know that if I haven't answered you after, well, 2 or 3 months, your your email might be in spam, and I just never check spam. Oh dear. Now another thing.
If I haven't answered a reader in a week, that's probably what has happened. Or sometimes
Show
emails just
off.
disappear into the ether and you never see them at all. I mean, that just happens. And
Yeah.
it pains me to think that readers may be out there thinking I just blew them off when I never got their email.
Here are a couple things from readers that really do bother them. I asked readers for questions, and this reader says, how much does it bother you to find editing errors after your book goes live or is printed? And then another one says, and I always connect these, but another one says, when the cover image doesn't match the character description. It's a pet peeve of this reader's, and they want to know how it feels to the author.
Well, back in the traditional publishing days, we often had covers that didn't match the characters, and we couldn't do a darn thing about it, and it drove me crazy.
Yeah.
And I knew the readers didn't like it. I didn't like that as a reader, and I hated it as an author. And I had several books like that where the covers did not match the characters, and I know readers didn't like it, and I would complain, but I don't think I ever got one changed.
Nope.
The publishers, the big publishers, they had already paid for that cover and they weren't going to change it. And how I felt about it, or even how readers felt about it, had nothing to do with it, which I thought was very short-sighted. But
Agreed.
now that I'm indie publishing, I can make darn sure that my covers reflect the characters inside, and I do. I spend kind of a lot of time on that. The one I just published in October, I went through probably 3 dozen models at least that my cover designer sent me after I gave her a description of the character. So she was only sending me models that basically matched my description, and I still went through probably 3 dozen of them before I found one that I thought looked like Molly. So, and I mean, they all had brown hair.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but I had to find the one that I thought looked like Molly. So, that sort of thing. And I do that with every book now that I'm indie publishing and commissioning my own covers. I love that aspect
Yeah.
of indie publishing.
I don't like looking for, well, I don't usually use people on my covers because of that.
I have people on most of, do I have them on all? I started out, when I first started indie publishing, I didn't want people on my covers. I didn't want, the clinch. And so the first few books that I indie published, my Regency series, when I first published that, none of those covers had people. They were all objects that had to do with the story. And they didn't sell terribly well. And after a couple years, I decided it was time for a refresh, and I got a different cover artist and put couples on the covers, and immediately sales almost doubled. So the readers like to see the couples on the covers.
Well,
Even though as an author I didn't want them there to begin with, but I've caved and I put people on my covers now because the readers seem to really like it. And I'm sure that's genre specific too.
oh
You know,
yeah.
I'm sure that varies a lot by genre.
That's the show for this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for joining Authors Love Readers podcast. Remember, you can always find out more about our guest authors in the show notes, and you can find out more about me at www.patriciamclinn.com. You can also send in questions to be asked of future authors at podcast@authorslovereaders.com. Wishing you lots of happy reading. Bye.